Fairfield City Planning Commission is now called to order. Mr. Feinstein, may we please have the roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Paul.
Yes, I'm there.
Okay. Commissioner Greavy,
Present.
Commissioner Werblin,
Present.
Commissioner Evans,
Present.
Commissioner Matthews,
Present.
Vice Chairperson Cruzen,
Present.
and Chairperson Childs.
I'm going to ask Commissioner Greavy if he'd lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will now discuss information on providing public comments. Persons wishing to address the Planning Commission on subjects not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, provided that no action may be taken on off-agenda items except as authorized by law. Off-agenda items from the public will be taken under consideration without discussion by the Commission and may be referred to staff. Comments will be accepted in person or via Zoom. Public comment instructions are as follows. To speak on an agenda item in person, please complete a speaker's card and give it to the secretary before the meeting or at the latest prior to the time for public comments on that item. When joining via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature or press *9 on your phone to request to speak. You will be called on by name and will have 3 minutes to speak. So our next item is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I motion to approve the agenda.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry.
Second.
I'm sorry. Okay, now, sorry about that. It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as submitted. We will vote by roll call. Mr. Feinstein, will you conduct the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Paul,
Yes.
Commissioner Greavy,
Approve.
Commissioner Werblin,
Yes.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Commissioner Matthews,
Approve.
Vice Chairperson Cruzen,
Yes.
and Chairperson Childs.
Approved. Next is the approval of the minutes for the January 25th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes?
Not from staff.
Do I have the motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second. Oh, sorry.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as submitted. Mr. Feinstein, will you conduct the roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Paul,
Approved.
Commissioner Greavy,
Approve.
Commissioner Werblin,
Approve.
Commissioner Evans,
Approved.
Commissioner Matthews,
Approve.
Vice Chairperson Cruzen,
Approved.
and Chairperson Childs.
Approved. Now we're going to go to public comments. This is the time for the public to speak on items not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. I will now open the public comment period.
And we have no cards, and we have no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. I will now close the public comment period. Now we're moving to scheduled matters. The next item on the agenda is scheduled matters. For each item, there will be a presentation by city staff. For items that involve application requests, I will then ask the applicant to address the commission if they so desire. Then I will open the comment period via Zoom and in-house. I will close the comment period after all comments have been provided and after all our questions regarding the testimony during the comment period have been answered. After the comment period is closed, the commission will deliberate on the item and may have additional questions for staff. We cannot take additional testimony or questions from the public after the comment period is closed. So our first agenda item is 5253 Business Center Drive, zone change.
Good evening, Commissioners. Those of you joining us tonight, my name is Maylee Sheehan, and I will be presenting item A. The project site is approximately 11 acres at 5253 Business Center Drive. There is currently an existing office building that is vacant on the property. The zoning designation is CONC, or Commercial Office North Cordelia. Here we have a contextual map to give you a better sense of where the project is located in the city. It's a little hard to see, but you have Highway 12 coming in, Interstate 80, and 680. Some major roadways here is Green Valley Road, Business Center Drive, Knightsville Road, and Mangles Boulevard. A few key markers, it's just off screen, but you do have Rodriguez High School down to the south there. We have the Costco and Safeway shopping center within the Green Valley Crossings Shopping Center. And further down Business Center Drive, there's a few buildings that have been under construction and are completed. So there's two, or I believe there's actually three warehouse buildings now. There's the new Spanos apartment complex. And there is also a hotel project that is currently underway. You see it when you come off of Knightsville. And then across the way, there is a handful of different quick service restaurants and also the Scandia mini golf course. I'm just giving you a quick idea of where we are located in the city. The existing general plan designation is Highway and Regional Commercial, or CHR, and the zoning designation, again, is CONC, Commercial Office with a North Cordelia Overlay District. The project application before you this evening is a general plan amendment and a zone change for the subject site to switch both of those designations over to Industrial Business Park, or IBP. The Planning Commission is requested to take action tonight to recommend to the City Council whether to approve or deny the general plan amendment and zone change request. I do also want to note that this application does not come with any proposed development. It's purely just changing the designations for the land. When evaluating the general plan amendment and zone change requests, staff reviewed the intent and permitted uses for the current designations. Looking at the CHR general plan designation, this designation is applied to several properties that run along the highway or the freeway Interstate 80. It's intended for highway-oriented retail and services such as regional shopping centers, commercial recreation, professional offices, and governmental uses. The related commercial office zoning designation is intended, obviously, for office uses and associated services. Some typical land uses you would see in the CO zones are professional offices, medical offices, administrative offices, banks and financial institutions. You would also see some general retail and business personal development schools and some, associated food service businesses. The general plan IBP designation is intended for master plan industrial parks and campus-like settings. The associated IBP zoning district is suitable for administrative and professional offices, research and development parks, warehouse and distribution, and light manufacturing and assembly. Commercial uses in the IPB zone are generally limited. You will see some business support services and accessory sales for goods that are produced on-site. And additionally, food services are permitted in these designations. Again, we're trying to establish an office park and industrial park feel, so there would be some of those ancillary commercial uses. As an example, much of the land between Green Valley Road and Sassoon Valley Road is designated IBP. So when we were looking at that contextual map, the various new warehouses that have just been constructed, the hotel that is under construction, there is Key Witt has offices out there, North Bay Medical has offices. So that particular stretch of Business Center Drive is an IPB zone, just to give you an idea of what the intent of the general plan is looking for in that designation. On this slide here, I've provided some tables to give us a good kind of compare and contrast of the two land uses. I've done my best to make it readable with some color coordination. So the yellow there are land uses that are only permitted in IBP zones. The green is land uses only permitted in commercial office zones. The blue are uses that are permitted in both. And then the white are uses that are permitted in neither. The P that you see means that the use is outright permitted, and then the C stands for a conditional use permit. So the use could be permitted, but it has to undergo the city's use permit process. So on the left-hand side, you have an industry category. The zoning ordinance has several different categories of land uses, but for tonight, I just wanted to grab some of the major ones that have differences. Several of the other categories, the land uses are all permitted in both the IBP and the CO zone. So when you're looking at the industry table, you can see that cannabis manufacturing and testing is a permitted use. Manufacturing light is permitted, medium being conditionally permitted, and then wholesale storage and distribution light and medium also being conditionally permitted. You'll notice that there's no green in that particular table, as none of those uses are permitted in the CO zone. Looking over at the other table, general services, commercial cannabis retail is a permitted use in the IBP. However, it is not in the CO. When you're looking at CO, we're looking at the green there. There's a range of different services such as equipment rental, maintenance and repair, personal care and domestic services, also limited, so same title but limited. Those services are beauty salons, tanning, laundromats, tailoring, photography studios, so different personal services that you might see in retail centers or shopping centers. And then additionally, there's the blue, so the uses that both designations do share. So handicraft shops, laboratory, business support services, and hotels. And then I have one more slide here just to show general retail. And you'll see here that all of the highlighted colored columns there are just green. These uses are only permitted in the CO. There are none that share between the two designations, and there's none that's only for the IBP. So I include these just to give an idea of what uses would be permitted between the two zones and really exemplify the difference. Although, you know, when you hear industrial business park and commercial office, you think office. They both kind of correlate with one another. However, there are some significant differences in terms of land use and operations between the two categories. Considering that the applicant is looking for a general plan amendment and zone change, staff is assuming that they are seeking uses that are geared more towards industry rather than the different office and general service uses that are already permitted in either zone. So shifting over to some further analysis of the submittal tonight, the project site is located in what's known as the Green Valley Technical Plaza. That particular plaza is interconnected with the Green Valley Crossing Shopping Center where the Costco and Safeway are. So there's internal road networks that essentially make the two centers function as one center. This center is located along the freeway, which is obviously a very high traffic area visible from the roads, and developments like these add to the city's economic base and benefit the overall welfare of the adjoining communities. Introducing an industrial use into the Technical Plaza and the Green Valley Crossing Shopping Center could have potential traffic, circulation, utility, and land use operation impacts that should be thoroughly studied before making land use decisions, which is a good way for me to segue into the fact the city is currently undergoing a general plan update. That update plans for future growth and development by establishing a policy of framework for decision makers. It looks at the city for the next 25 to 30 years. The update is presently in the land use scenario. So in the upcoming months, staff will be bringing to City Council various land use scenarios for key focus areas throughout the city, including the Green Valley and Cordelia area. As part of the review, the council will assess the needs of the community and the changing development landscape. And based on the analysis provided, council could consider a range of land uses, commercial, industrial, or residential. During that update process, the location and amount of commercial land within the city will be analyzed and determine what is compatible with the growth and future needs of the community. So a decision as to whether to amend a project site's general plan and zoning designation should really be made concurrent or after the city council has a chance to select the land use alternatives that identifies the various areas in the city. Following a review of the project, staff determined that this project is exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act under Section 1527A, which provides that projects disapproved or rejected by a public agency are statutorily exempt from environmental review. Should the project be supported by the Commission and the Council, an additional environmental review will be necessary. So with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution PC 2023-04, recommending that City Council deny the general plan amendment and zone change at this time. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. Thank you.
And if I could add just one thing to that recommendation, although that is the recommendation to deny it at this time, that doesn't mean that the city would necessarily be opposed to it as a part of the larger general plan update. And it's something that we would recommend for the city council to look at that time.
So now is the time for questions for staff. Please hold your comments or deliberation on the item until after the public hearing is closed. Do any members of the commission have questions for staff?
Maylee, once again, excellent presentation. Would you mind going back to the initial slide that shows the two projects side by side?
Is this the slide?
One of the first one or two. It has, keep going. One more. Okay, so is the applicant the owner of both of those projects?
Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't know if they are the owner of the land, but I know that the application is only for the parcel that's highlighted in red.
And is a reason for that that the other building is not conducive to such a change?
To be honest, I could not answer that
Okay.
definitively. You know, any applicant could request a change for either parcel or both.
Yeah. And they only requested it for what's in the red there.
Right.
Any other?
Right.
Oh, sorry.
And are both projects currently vacant?
I only know that the subject property is vacant.
Okay.
What kind of time frame is the applicant looking for?
I'm sorry, could you elaborate in terms of time frame?
Yeah, in terms of when they would want this done.
So I'm sorry, I didn't know if you were going to jump in, Dave. Excuse me. So our typical general plan and zone change process can run anywhere from 2 to 4-ish months, just depending on the different review that needs to be conducted. I would imagine that the applicant would like the process to conclude sooner than later. Most of our applicants do. In terms of filling the building with whatever, you know, interested party they have, I don't have that particular information. They were not at a point where they wanted to disclose a user.
Okay.
And I believe the applicant has submitted a speaker card, so they'll have a chance to speak. And if you have questions for the applicant directly, I think there'll be that opportunity.
So any other commissioners at this time?
Yes, can you go back to the slide that had the general plan update bullet points, please?
Yeah.
So my question is, if this is approved, then that, changing that zoning would mean that we wouldn't be able to use that land for commercial or residential uses.
So Yes, if this particular property was to undergo the general plan amendment and zone change to IBP, it would be subject to the various industrial business park uses. However, the general plan update would still continue. Approval or denial of the project tonight does not change the progress of the general plan update.
Thank you.
Maylee, given that, is it possible then that this could be included as part of the general plan update?
Yes, the whole city is definitely a focus of the general plan update, but we have had a lot of community feedback specifically for the North Cordelia area. So I know that council will be taking a particularly close look at these different shopping centers.
Yeah, and we've preliminarily, it hasn't been finally scheduled, but we've preliminarily scheduled a meeting with the city council in June to go over alternatives for land development in North Cordelia, as well as the rest of the general plan. So, we think this is the June would be when this would be discussed in detail with the city council. However, as an application, it's on its own, the Planning Commission would make a decision tonight as to what your recommendation would be. It would be moving forward to the City Council independent of the general plan update. Staff's recommendation to council, though, is that they hold off on any approval of that until they go through the general plan update.
Okay. Any other commissioners?
Just one other quick follow-up. So is staff's recommendation not to approve it based on the fact that there is not a current proposal or use for that, given the change, and coupled with the fact that we're going through the general plan update? Is that the basis of the negative recommendation?
Yes, I would say your statement is accurate. As a portion of our recommendation is the fact that we don't quite know what the user would be, whether it's, medium manufacturing, if it's an office use, if it's a warehouse use, and whether or not, the site has the facilities to support any of those uses. And then in addition to that, the fact that we are undergoing our general plan update with a close focus on the North Cordelia area.
And I think the fact that we don't know exactly who would be occupying this property is probably a little less of the focus here. Anytime you're doing a general plan amendment, that means that they could occupy the building, they could tear the building down, we just don't know. So we have to approach it from the standpoint of, we don't know exactly what the uses are that are going to go in there, but they would be within the range of activities that are called out in the general plan and zoning. And so we'd be looking at it right now from, what are those ranges of uses? So it's less a concern that we don't know and more that the timing is such that we're about to really dive into the analysis of what are the needs for North Cordelia and the Cordelia and the city as a whole. Not only what are the needs, but how does that fit in? How does this proposal fit in with those range of needs? Where is the city council on a range of issues in North Cordelia? And generally, from a planning perspective, it's better to take these questions as a part of a larger analysis rather than one-off piece by piece. So that's the basis for the staff recommendation. It doesn't mean that this couldn't be recommended to be approved or that the city council couldn't take action on it independently, but staff's recommendation, just simply from good planning practice, would be to handle it as a part of that more comprehensive review.
Any other commissioner comments? Seeing none, I will now open the public hearing section, and I have a speaker card from Jose McNeil, and we'll have 3 minutes.
Actually, as the applicant, can I get more than 3 minutes? That's what it said in the
So
agenda.
the city's practice is all speakers have 3 minutes. The chairperson, however, does have the ability as the applicant to give you more time.
Thank you. I'm Jose McNeil, 33-year resident of Cordelia and Green Valley. Built 2 projects in Fairfield, Pony Express Business Park and 5140 Business Center Drive in Green Valley. I'm in the process of acquiring this process. I applied for this zoning permit change or zoning change in October We're now in February, headed to March. I've had 3 conversations with planning staff. No questions, no thoughts about what's going to go in here. They had no criteria for asking about that. I got their staff report, as you guys have. I'll try and go through it very quickly. I love the analysis for the Planning Commission is that the business and industrial park should be in a campus-like setting. If we go back to that first slide with the picture, you can see it is a campus. In the body of the document, it says it can be assumed that the applicant is interested in attracting industry. Don't assume that. All I'm trying to do is take a building that has been vacant for 10 years, which the staff did not know, and they don't know the other building has been vacant for 10 years, and change it to a zoning that will work and bring jobs. The idea of taking this to the general plan update, there's no time frame for the general plan to be approved, let alone when those appeals will be settled. They're going to present it in June. Then it's going to come back in October, and they're going to vote on it about this time in 2024. So what the staff is saying is shut down any changes in the city until that plan is approved. Juxtaposition to that is the city of Vacaville, who we compete with, approved 340,000 square feet of life sciences buildings in 90 days. We did not do that. Under the objections, they say that it violates policy LU 1.2, which enjoys and acts for employment. It minimizes conflicts between land uses. There is no conflict here. It also asks for, under ED3, a strong, diverse economic base. That's what I'm asking to do. Take this building that's empty and turn it into something, whether it be lab space, teaching space, light industrial, office, could be. Also, on the traffic side, I'm going to run out of time here. Currently, this is parked at 7 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. And just for fun, for math, that's 700 parking spaces. When it gets zoned the way I want it, it will knock those parking spaces down to about 700, or down to about 280.
Okay, you've
The
got,
trips per day.
you got 1 minute.
What?
We got 1 minute.
Yeah. The trips per day under the current zoning are 2,800 trips per day. 2,800. Under what I'm asking for and what I think this will go for, we'll knock it down to 720 trips per day. So traffic congestion out here, living in Green Valley, in Lower Green Valley, as they call it, I see that with the Neitzel Road, with the item that's going to come up in back of me for the apartments, with the hotel. That's a mess, and it has to be addressed. This is a reliever for that. This change in use would relieve that practice. Also, Business Center Drive, which the city staff has not looked at, is scheduled to be connected to Red Top Road. And this is a reliever for Highway 12. Business Center Drive becomes a much bigger use facility. So, in conclusion, this is a project that is vacant, is generating no income for the city nor jobs. The other building is going to go to auction because no one wants it in the current zoning. This is a blighted area, homeless are here. The connection to the shopping center is a 4-lane road off of Business Center Drive. It's not much of a connection, it's separate. It was designed that way, it was built that way. It was built as a call center to employ dense population of office workers. If you read the news, office is not coming back. Office vacancy in Fairfield is 25%. Office or industrial vacancy in Fairfield, 2.2%.
Thank you, Mr. McNeil.
Manufacturing is 0.1%. Find the jobs, find the buildings to bring the jobs.
Do we have any speakers via Zoom?
We do have one hand raised, yes.
Would staff like to respond to any of the issues raised?
We do have one hand raised,
Oh, I'm
so if we can take the
Yes.
speaker by Zoom.
Yes, a Zoom speaker?
Yes, there is. Joe, you have 3 minutes.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, this is Joe Green Heffern, and I live in the North Cordelia area. And I firmly support the city's position of denying this application at this time while we're in the middle of the general plan update. We have been lacking a vision for the North Cordelia area for the last 10 or 15 years that has allowed piecemeal rezoning changes, and especially when we don't know what's going in and how the traffic's impacted and the impact, I think we just need to wait. Unfortunately, I support the speaker in that we need to find jobs, but we've waited 10 years. If it's been vacant 10 years, this is not a new problem, and we just need to get a good vision for this area and then move forward with appropriate industrial, commercial, and residential development. Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers via Zoom? Yes.
Hi, my name is Marcia Perkins, and Joe just spoke. He's the vice president of one of the HOAs that's close to the area, and I'm the president of.
Oh, can you come forward to the podium, please? Yes. And you can state what your name is?
Morticia Perkins. I'm the president of Sienna Home Community, HOAs. Joe just spoke, I just heard him on Intercom, but he's also the president of a community that's very close to where, I'm actually going to be behind the development if that happens. I spoke to a lot of the homeowners and we're not for it. We do not want anything else. I'm all for bringing businesses into the community, but I think a apartment building was proposed, and we just built one less than a mile down the street. I think we would like to see commercial real estate there because I thought that's what it was zoned for. But it seems like the zoning changed, and with that, I mean, think about the school system. I have a lot of moms and parents in the community that are complaining now about the classes being filled up because the school is just not big enough. A lot of the homeowners are constantly keeping up with this, and they're like, they do not agree with it. They would rather, real estate, of course, we want somebody to come that's gonna bring businesses, but I'm hoping, along with a lot of other homeowners are hoping it's not another apartment building. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers by Zoom? Okay, seeing none, would staff like to respond to any of the issues raised?
Yes, I think I hear a little side conversation going in the audience as well. I do want to emphasize that the zone change and general plan amendment request tonight is for industrial, so there is no apartment or residential component proposed for this particular project. Later on in the agenda, there is a draft environmental impact report for a project or apartment project that's not so far from this site. But I just did want to clarify that the request tonight is for an industrial business park. And then to the applicant's statements that he made, I did also just want to add some context that there were conversations during the application time regarding use, but unfortunately, I'm sure there's a lot that goes into the real estate. They were not at the point in time where they wanted to disclose a user to us. I'm not hearing a particular user this evening either. I don't mean to draw conclusions or make assumptions, but when comparing the two land use categories, professional and business schools, offices, and several of the other categories are already permitted in the CO zone, and that's the only reason why we were potentially anticipating light manufacturing and or warehousing. But we don't have confirmation that that is the particular use. And to echo a little bit of what Dave Feinstein had said earlier, when we get applications like this, we are just trying to look at it in terms of any use that could be permitted in the IPP zone and how that use could impact the surrounding community and area in terms of services, vehicle miles traveled, et cetera. And then the last component I think I wanted to touch on was the application was received in October. However, it was not found to be complete until I'm sorry, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but we have 30 days to determine whether an application is complete or incomplete. Our first pass, it was incomplete, missing just a handful of materials, and then there was another 30 days to determine if that was complete or incomplete. So from the time that the project was considered complete, it has been probably 2 or 3 months, I would say. Thank you.
Just one final item. I think it's possible that the speaker was speaking on item B, which is the apartment, and so would encourage, if that's the case, to fill out a speaker card for item B and just bring that on up. We'll take those comments at that time.
I will now close the public hearing and turn it back to the commission for their deliberations. So, commissioners?
Hi, I have a question. I know we're beyond the question period, but some things have come up for me. Is it okay to ask a couple of questions right now?
Mm-hmm.
So the first is, since we already have the map up, if you could show us where the properties are that the current applicant was discussing, and then we see. Let me back up. I'm trying to find out how far the applicants are from each other that are on the agenda tonight. Sorry,
Not a
I'm
problem.
tired.
So, not a problem. So for this item, the general plan amendment and zone change from commercial to industrial business park, that's your red star. And then if I can see close enough, item B is where the laser pointer is hovering.
And if we were to rezone the area that applicant A is bringing before us tonight, would that somehow affect applicant B?
I would say that they're separate applications, so it wouldn't affect any, processing for applicant B.
Well, not the processing, but being that one is for housing and the other one would be for industrial, but we would be rezoning a property that looks like we would be rezoning an area that looks like it's in pretty close proximity to where we're talking about potentially having housing. So I'm just wondering what the zoning area would be.
Sure, if you wanted to support the request, the star would be industrial business park, and then, at a future date, if the housing project was approved, that would be, I believe it's very high density housing. So you would have, essentially looking at this map, you have single-family residential housing here, you have regional commercial shopping here with the Costco Center, and then you would have an apartment complex, and then it kind of merges into the different warehouses and then back into residential. So you would have a combination of residential, industrial, and commercial within that stretch of Business Center Drive.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is about the time frame for the general plan, because I know last time we met, there were some time frames mentioned and some consequences that would happen if the time frame was not followed. So I'm wondering if you can give us a sense of whether or not there's a time frame for the approval of the general plan or what's happening next with that.
Yeah, so I can take that. I'm more involved directly in that, I think, than Mealy, so I'll answer that question for you. So the timeframes that you're talking about, that was when we looked at the housing element, which is a component of the general plan, and that's the only element of the general plan where there actually are state-mandated timeframes. And the state-mandated timeframe was last week to wrap that up. And so, you heard it within that time frame. The rest of the general plan, however, there's no time frame specified by law. So it's essentially, however quickly the city is able to move that through. As mentioned, we've preliminarily set a meeting in June on the council's calendar to discuss the general plan, the alternatives, get actual direction and feedback from the city council on this item. If the city council takes action in June, or not takes action, but gives that direction, we'd be looking somewhere mid-2024 is what I would estimate for the actual final adoption. So,
Any other commissioners?
I have a question for the applicant. Are we beyond being able to engage on that?
In the discretion of the chair.
Yeah, we can.
So do we have to reopen public?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I don't believe we need to reopen the public comment period, but if there are specific requests of the applicant, I think if the chair is open to that conversation, go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Mr. McNeil, you can come. So did I hear in your presentation you're in the process of acquiring the property or that you currently own it?
In the process, it's contingent on getting this approved.
Okay, and do you currently have any potential users that you have in mind?
We have many potential users. None will commit until the zoning is approved.
So can you elaborate on?
They range from laboratories of life sciences to light manufacturing to wine storage and production. The location of this facility nearby Napa, as proven by Chuck Wagner and Camus, and our wonderful Sassoon Valley has provided a wonderful entree into the wine industry. And that could be a potential. There are a lot of potentials. And again, it's the difference between theory, what could it be, and what it's going to be. And it gets dictated by current events, economic events. What we do know, there's a 1% chance this goes to office. There's a 99% chance it's something other than office.
So I have not been inside, though I'm frequently buying gas at Costco, so I drive by it all the time.
As we all do, I think.
What is the nature of the current interior improvements of the building?
100% office, all open floor plate.
Ceiling height?
Ceiling height is, well, the ceiling height for the office is about 10 feet. It goes up to under the deck to about 20 foot clear, which is why light manufacturing, not heavy warehouse distribution, which was approved in Green Valley Business Center. It's not going to be that with the heavy trucks.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be, again, because when you develop or plan a real estate project, you take your best guess. And then a tenant comes along that is not someone you thought of, and you have to work through the whole thing again. But what I'm confident on is with the clear height we have, with how we can do this, there's going to be a couple grade level doors and a couple dock doors we're going to end up putting in here for trucks. Nothing major. There's not going to be 27 dock doors. It's going to be 3 or 4, and probably 3 or 4 grade doors to get goods in, to manufacture, and get back out. But that could change because we don't know. If it's a lab, which we're talking to a school nearby that needs space because another city can't get their act together to provide space for them, this could be a teaching facility for laboratory, pharmacology, and medical. So we have a lot of options. What this change in zoning does is it broadens the option we have, period.
And are you planning on acquiring both properties or just the one?
Right now, I'm trying to get this one approved. I've been approached by the owners of the other one to do a similar thing, and if it works, it would work great. But, based on the staff's recommendation, the staff wants to sit on their hands until 2024. No one's going to sit still until that gets done to sell this project. And tenants are not going to sign up for something in 2024. And that does not take into account any appeal of the general plan, which I'm sure the staff would say is 100% going to happen.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioners? Okay.
Could I just add one component? That was helpful to hear some of the options. I do want to highlight that laboratory processing and schools are permitted in both zones. Obviously, it doesn't broaden the other industrial options, but I did just want to highlight that particular item.
Okay.
And just one other comment regarding Commissioner Evans's questions. So the item B for the Green Valley 3 Apartments project is just a study session tonight. You won't be voting on a recommendation to approve that project at this time. So I wouldn't let that project bear on your decision with this one way or the other.
Yes.
Mainly, would we be allowed, would the applicant be allowed to utilize the conditional use permit option on this property if they found a proper tenant to move forward in the gray areas on this, or are they pretty much stuck with what we've got here?
So in terms of conditional use permits, they would only be eligible for use permits for the land uses identified by the current ZO zoning that would allow for that. So for example, on this screen, recycling collection facility small, the bottom of that right-hand table is a C, so that would be a use permit. But if you're looking at the industry table, light or medium wholesale distribution or light or medium manufacturing assembly are just outright not permitted in the CO zones.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Another follow-up question for staff. So if the applicant were to come back having a contingent purchase and a contingent specific user that for which the zoning is required, there's no reason why this could not be reconsidered. Is that correct?
I wouldn't give 100% certainty to that. Again, echoing a little bit of what Dave had said earlier, staff recommendation is not solely based on a user for the building. We really are trying to take a comprehensive look at the entire North Cordelia area, and we do have the general plan update in our mind when we're considering that.
But my question really is, if right now it's a question of unknowns and asking for a certain zoning based on unknowns. If the unknowns became known, there's no reason why this could not come back in front of the commission.
Another application could come to you if that is, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, I'm sorry.
I'm basically saying, if we say no to the zoning and city council concurs with that, but 6 months from now, there is, hey, wait, I got a specific user for which I need this zoning change, they could reapply. Is that correct?
Yes, they could reapply.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioners? Seeing none, we're down to the motion. Do I have a motion to approve item A, resolution PC 2023-04?
I think before we move forward with this, I would just like to say that I do appreciate the thoughtfulness of the applicant in trying to bring jobs to the location and the fact that he's local as well. But for me, the general plan is more than just a document that, you know, we're putting together just for legal purposes. This is the vision of the people. And this particular area right now has a lot going on. There's a lot of concern from everyone that lives there in regards to what's going to happen here. And I don't think that there's a lot of people that are looking at this area as just one part. They're looking at developments as a whole, because we have been up here and we've heard a number of things in regards to retail space, in regards to schools, in regards to traffic, in regards to housing. So for me, the issue is that I cannot in good faith look at one particular area and change something as significant as the zone without making sure of what the vision is that's going to be in the general plan. And I think that we owe that to the people to wait a few more months, because the general plan only comes around every however many years, a couple of decades, I think it is, sometimes it depends. So I think we owe it to the people that, you know, are invested there, the key stakeholders, to wait a couple of months to hash this thing out and to look at the area as a whole. So I don't know if we're still deliberating or, but I just wanted to offer my take on it. But I do appreciate that the applicant is local and concerned about jobs. We all are.
Oh, is that a motion?
I move to approve resolution PC 2023-04.
Is there a second?
With no second, is there an alternate motion from any of the commissioners?
I motion we not approve PC 2023-04.
And is there a second to Commissioner Cruzen's motion?
I'd like to just have a little more deliberation if we could, please. Is that all right, Chair? So I'm sympathetic to the applicant and the efforts that he's making, as well as the difficulty of, trying to get a user that may need a different zoning. Frankly, this location, in my opinion, and I live and work in that area, so I know it reasonably well, is not, unless the applicant's plan was to raise a building and put up other similar warehouse facilities, which presumably would be his right if we approve and City Council concurs with the zoning change. So that's a concern that I have with following the motion that's on the table. However, if the applicant's intent is to convert it to, let's say, a laboratory use, as was mentioned, which frankly does not require a zoning change, then I don't have a problem. And so I'm torn on this because and I'm sure the communities across Business Center Drive do not want to see additional, large trucking activity in that location. Having a school or otherwise is a totally different thing. And the point that the applicant also brought up of 7 per thousand is a very generous parking ratio for any kind of activity. So that's the issue that I'm struggling with, and I don't really have a firm idea in my mind as how to resolve that. Other than, and that's sort of my line of reasoning, to ask if the unknowns became knowns, let's review it again, to me seems like a better solution to this. That's my point.
So for tonight, staff's looking to determine whether or not the Planning Commission is interested in making a recommendation to the City Council to deny the request, which is the resolution before you, or to ask us to come back with potentially a resolution recommending that the City Council approve this item. So really, it's sort of a, it's an up or down kind of a question, and wherever the Planning Commission is, or if you need more information, we can certainly, if the information is available, we can come back if you need more information to make a decision. But tonight we'd be looking for either motion and action on the resolution before you, or alternate direction from the council or from the Planning Commission.
Can you confirm what Vice Chair Cruzen, what was her motion? I wasn't sure because I thought you said to approve. This one's a little tricky because approval is denying the applicant. So I just need clarification if she was coming up with an alternate motion. So if I can have clarification of that, please.
Right. So I think the initial, or the second motion made by Commissioner Cruzen was a little deficient in terms of direction, right? Simply denying the resolution as proposed doesn't provide any direction to staff. No, it's okay. Additionally, this resolution includes a number of findings, Section 4 with the various land use policies. In addition, the CEQA finding in Section 5, and so we would need some direction on how the ultimately approved direction from staff would be consistent with various land use policies and with CEQA.
I think you need to direct the Planning Commission on their options. What happens if they deny, and what happens if they approve, and what the applicant can do at that
At this time, the public comment period has closed, and commissioners should not consider further comments.
Yeah, and I think as a part of your deliberations, there was not support for the recommendation, for the motion in front of you to recommend denial. I think we'd be looking, for more deliberations from the commission on, what is it that you think as a majority of you could recommend to the city council, or if you need more information that's available. If there's information that can be developed that you need to make a decision, we can take that direction and come back with that information to help you. Or if you believe now that you think that you would want to recommend to the city council to approve it, then we'd want that direction back. We can come back to you with that resolution.
I just want to clarify that I'm understanding it properly. So the resolution before us is in regards to zoning. And currently, the building that we're looking at is not owned by the applicant, and neither is the building behind it. And whoever would be occupying the building, we don't know that either. So it sounds like both are contingent. But what is possible is that if we rezone this area, if for whatever reason the contingencies fall through with the current applicant, another applicant doing heavy industrial can come into the area and request whatever. Like say, I think I saw cannabis. So is that how I'm understanding it? If we rezone this, then we are stuck with having heavy industrial or whatever falls under that?
Sure. Yes. So I'll start in a couple places, actually. So I just want to clarify. For the project tonight, we are only looking at the one building. So there are 2 vacant buildings, as I understand it now, out there. But we are only looking at the one highlighted site on the screen. And should it be rezoned to industrial business park, there are several different uses that could be permitted by right or conditionally permitted. I do want to identify on the screen here that heavy manufacturing and heavy wholesale and distribution would not be permitted in the industrial business park zone. However, as you can see, light or medium could be permitted or conditionally permitted. And yes, commercial cannabis manufacturing and lab testing is also permitted in this particular zone. And then just a few comments listening to the discussion here. As the person who wrote the resolution, I do want to clarify that if you approve this resolution tonight, it denies the requests to change the zoning and general plan designation. If you deny the resolution tonight, to Ethan's point, staff would need more recommendation of deny the request and come back with findings of approval for X, Y, and Z, or deny the request and come back with an alternative resolution. So for example, this particular resolution simply just addresses the zone change and the general plan amendment. If for some reason you wanted a resolution that said deny the zone change and general plan amendment, but X, Y, and Z, that could be another option. So you kind of have a platter of options for the evening.
Yeah, but I will note that the request is to change. So really, I mean, I think the focus should be, do you believe that this site should be changed, or do you want to see it held where it is now, either in perpetuity or to be considered as a part of the general plan? If you recommend that it not be changed, which is essentially supporting the resolution, essentially you're turning it back over to the city council with a recommendation at a minimum to look at it during the general plan, because that's the next step, and we absolutely would look at it during the general plan update.
Just want clarity. Can I make a comment now, my observations, or can I only, are we at a point where we can only go forward with my motion?
No, you can, this is part of your deliberations, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We're looking for, as you look, because that motion did not pass, I think it probably needs more discussion and comment from individual commissioners to help work towards what is it that the commission would like to see.
Very well.
And eventually a motion to give that direction that a majority of you would agree with.
Thank you. So I think I finally got a little clarity, to be perfectly honest, and I think I'm kind of grateful. I think no one here on the board was really sure where we needed to go with this. I feel for the applicant, that's great, but he came in here with no promises, no guarantees, and no direction. If he had come in here with direction and an idea that we wanted to go forward with, that would have allowed us a much better idea of where we wanted to go. In light of that, I think we need to look at the bigger picture, as Ms. Evans said here earlier, and acknowledge the fact that really what we need to do is, we really are here because we care, and we want to do the right thing for the community. And at this time, I think I would be in favor of moving forward with staff's recommendation.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I appreciate the continued deliberation, and I appreciate Mr. McNeil, the zest and commitment to bringing in jobs to this area. But I also think, especially in this part of the town, we need to look at the bigger picture. And because we're soon to look at, the planning update, I think it's premature to change the land zone for one particular area. And I'm okay with that. I know we were talking about if we had known, well, who's going to be the occupant of the building. And that piece is important, but to me, not as important as just looking at the big picture and what we need in this part of Fairfield.
And just to follow up, my biggest concern is if we were to recommend a zoning change and City Council approved that, that would enable demolition of the current improvements, and unless I'm misunderstanding, they could replace it with a warehouse up to 50 feet in height, and similar to what recently has been built down the road.
Correct. What was recently built down the road does have an IBP zoning designation, so if this parcel were to change, it would be within the property owner's right to demo and build new.
Right. So given that, I'm also supportive of staff recommendation at this point in time.
Okay. Any more?
And I'm prepared to make a motion or second Ms. Evans.
So I think at this time, due to the level of deliberation that occurred between the initial motions made, a new motion is appropriate. So effectively, neither motion got a second, so there are no motions on the floor currently.
Okay, so I'm going to resubmit that motion. Do I have a motion to approve item A, Resolution PC 2023-04?
I move to approve Resolution PC 2023-4.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Feinstein, will you conduct the roll call vote?
Yes, Commissioner Paul,
Approved?
Commissioner Greavy,
Yes.
Commissioner Werblin,
Yes.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Commissioner Matthews,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Cruzen,
Yes.
and Chairperson Childs.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay. Now we'll go to our next agenda item, and it's going to be a study session on a draft environmental impact report for the Green Valley 3 Apartments project. And our presenter is Senior Planner Jonathan Atkinson.
Mr. Chairperson, may we have a 2-minute break before we enter into the study session, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Planning Commission is back in session, and now we'll hear from Mr. Jonathan Atkinson.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Planning Commissioners. My name is Jonathan Atkinson. I'm going to provide some brief introductory remarks for the Green Valley 3 Apartments Environmental Impact Report. The city in 2020 received an application for residential development, zone change, general plan amendment, and the city determined that an environmental impact report was necessary to analyze the impacts of the proposed project. The city subsequently retained Barati Consulting LLC to conduct the environmental review. The draft environmental review impact report was subsequently drafted and circulated for public review. Tonight is an opportunity to provide comments on that draft EIR. No formal actions will be taken tonight. We have Shabnam Barati of Barati Consulting, who will provide you with an overview of the draft EIR.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Shabnam Barati, Barati Consulting. Teamed with LSA, our team was retained by the city to prepare the EIR. We came here before the Commission for the scoping session. We are here now with the draft EIR. We have some results to report to you guys. Let me make sure I know how to. Okay, here we go. So this is just a brief agenda. We'll talk about the purpose of this hearing. I'll describe the project again briefly, talk about the CEQA overview process, and then talk about mainly the impacts that we found when we did the analysis. And then I think at the end of that, it'll be open for public comment. So with that, as Jonathan said, the draft EIR was completed and published on the 9th of January, put out for 45 days for public and agency comments through 23rd of February. And the purpose of today's meeting is to get verbal and written comments from the public as well as from the commissioners here. This is the project location, about approximately 5-acre site off of Business Center Drive. The project is a single 4-story building. It's got 3 wings. Oh, there is a map. Let me take it there. Here we go. So it's got 3 wings and 185 apartment units. And the apartment units range from studios to 2-bedroom apartments. And there's a central clubhouse area there. It has other amenities, outdoor assembling areas, a pool, dog run, trail, and recreational facilities for the residents. The project also includes parking along the periphery, surface parking. Then there are carports as well as garages that would go with some of the apartments. And then there is a large, I forget the number of spaces, but there's a garage here in the corner, a 2-story garage. I'm so sorry. Here we go. It's a 2-story garage there. There are 2, this image shows you the project as it appears from Business Center Drive. And this is a view of the project, looking at it from the rear, where you have a view of the parking structure, and then the apartments after that, beyond that. The project does require both a general plan amendment and a zone change. The designation currently is Business Industrial Park, and the zoning is Industrial Park, North Cordelia overlay, and those would need to be changed. A residential very high density is the general plan designation that has been requested, and the zoning change corresponds to that. So the project requires that. In general, about CEQA, for any discretionary project, CEQA compliance is required. This is the discretionary approval, as you all know. And in the process, the city did determine that an EIR was needed, which is why we prepared one. as a first step in doing the impact analysis, we figure out, what are the existing conditions on the project site and in the general vicinity. So we establish what are called baseline conditions. We follow up with doing the impact analysis, and we focus on the change that would occur as a result of project implementation. And then we evaluate that change relative to thresholds of significance that we are established. And the city has already several established thresholds that it uses for all its projects. And CEQA emphasizes that impacts on the environment are of concern. Social and economic change impacts are not physical impacts on the environment and don't require evaluation under CEQA. Although in some circumstances they may be looked at, but not normally. What I did was I created a little summary of the impacts analysis that we've done. As many of you are aware, there are about 17 categories or impact types that are looked at under CEQA. And what we did was we looked at each one of them and figured out whether there would be significant impacts or not. And you will notice that in the first column there there are these, 7 land use categories where we would have significant or potentially significant impacts. Air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, geology and soils, noise, and transportation. Those are the categories where we did find significant or potentially significant impacts. However, we also found mitigation measures that could be implemented to reduce them to less than significant. The second group here is a large number of topics. In all those topics, the impacts were outright less than significant, did not require mitigation. Those include aesthetics, energy, greenhouse gas emissions, hydrology, water quality, land use and planning, public services and utilities, wildfire hazards, and population and housing. So those are those where there were less than significant impacts. And finally, there's the last column shows the 2 resources where we did not find any impacts, understandably so, because there's no agriculture or forestry on the site, therefore no impacts, and there are no mineral resources on the site, and therefore no impacts. So this gives us and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a little time on the significant impacts of the project. We found that there would be significant impacts in the area of air quality, especially that is during construction. There would be emissions of criteria pollutants, there would be emissions of toxic air contaminants during construction that would exceed thresholds, and we therefore identified mitigation measures in the EIR to address those exceedances and bring the levels down. We find that there is mitigation available and it's tried and tested that brings emissions down. Therefore, those mitigation measures are set forth in the EIR. Another area that we did find significant impacts is biological resources. Actually, these are considered potentially significant, meaning that in some cases we did not see the resource on the site. For instance, we didn't see burrowing owls on the site, but we cannot rule them out completely, that they could establish on the site before project goes to construction. Therefore, we said, okay, there might be an impact on that resource, i.e. potentially significant. Similarly with the monarch butterfly, there is no plant there right now that could support that butterfly, but the butterfly is in the broader area, and the plants are in the broader area, so they might potentially establish there, and therefore we might have a potential to affect that resource. There is a very small wetlands area on the project site, so there would be wetlands impact. And then there is the issue of nesting birds, because there's a riparian corridor right next to the project site. The project completely avoids that. In fact, there is a setback from the riparian area as part of the project, but nonetheless, it's close enough, so we need to make sure that we don't affect those birds during construction. So nesting behavior gets affected by loud noise. So mitigation measures are in the EIR to address all the significant impacts that we found, or potentially significant ones that we found. Then, moving on to cultural, similarly, the site has been evaluated, and it has been actually walked by 2 sets of consultants, and there has been some investigation, as including, some digging to make sure there is nothing on the site. Nonetheless, you cannot say, rule out, you can't say completely that there would be nothing there. So you just, this provides for that circumstance that there may be inadvertent discovery of either archaeological resources or human remains. And that's why we have mitigation measures for those inadvertent discoveries. And geology impacts are again in the same category, that the site has expansive soils in some area. The site has soils that could slump during construction and during cuts. So there are recommendations in the geotechnical report to address those. Those are mitigation for those impacts. And similarly for paleontology, there is no concern about paleontological resources on the site. Nonetheless, you cannot say they are absent totally. So as a precautionary measure, we have mitigation in there. And then moving on to noise. Again, here it's construction noise. There's no long-term noise source at the project site that would be of concern, but yes, during construction, there would be loud noise. And the receptors are pretty close to the north of the project site. So we did find an impact, but we also include a suite of mitigation measures to address construction noise. And then transportation, we found an impact related to vehicle miles traveled, which is the new metric that is used to evaluate transportation impacts. Found that the project would generate VMT that would exceed the threshold set forth by the city. So there is mitigation in the EIR to bring that down so that the threshold, the VMT for this project is below the threshold set forth by the city. So that, and then the EIR did look at alternatives, which is required, as you all know. We looked at a no project, no development alternative, i.e. leave the site alone, there'll be no development on the site. This is a CEQA required alternative, therefore it's in the EIR. We also looked at a no project alternative where the site would be developed with a use that is consistent with the existing zoning and general plan designation, i.e. which is the industrial business park. So we looked at developing the site with a commercial business, similar to the business use next door. And then finally, we looked at a reduced project alternative where we reduce the number of units that are built as part of the project, and there is a resulting reduction in impacts. So we also have a number of other alternatives that were considered but not looked at in detail because of one or many reasons. It could be that they were not found to be feasible, or they were clearly could result in greater impacts, or at least equal impacts, or just did not meet the objectives of the project also. So that was, so there are some in that category. And then the EIR does identify the environmentally superior alternative. For the public, I think here, I just wanted to point out that in this diagram, which shows the start of the project and the start of the environmental review process, which we've all gone through here, this is the work that we completed and published. We are here in this process. And once the 45-day period is over, we will take all the comments that are received and prepare a final EIR, which is this next step. And then that EIR will be published. And then it will come before you folks and then to the City Council for consideration. I think, yeah, this slide simply attaches dates to that process that we just went over. I don't think it's of much consequence. So with that, I think I want to turn it back to Jonathan. Oh yeah, unless there are questions for me, I will stay.
Okay. Thank you so much for that presentation.
No problem.
Do any members of the commission have any questions?
I have a little feedback on the report. Is now the time for that or later?
Yeah, we can take feedback if.
So one specific request that I have for the final report is to, in here, you show the impact on traffic, vehicle miles traveled, and the number of expected cars based on the project size. The alternative to this development would be another use such as office or similar. And I would like to see a comparison of the traffic counts based on those uses in the final report.
Yeah, it is actually in the draft currently.
Well,
And we can put a table if you would like to be able to, in the final, like, we can show it in a form of a table, so you have the side by side. But in the draft EIR on page 6-9, in the alternatives chapter,
Yeah, I looked at that and I saw the chart that you had.
yeah, let me, if you,
Okay,
yeah, if you
please.
don't mind going to 6-9, then I can point to you the paragraph. We, it's chapter 6 and page 9.
Okay, I'm going to make a recommendation that we hold commissioner comments after the public section, the public comment.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I apologize. I thought you'd meant a comment on the staff report.
Oh, no.
Why don't we
Sorry.
hold comments on the EIR itself till after the public comment portion? We'll come back. But if there's questions, just things like that, happy to take them now.
Okay, on the public comment section, I'd like to make a recommendation. Since the focus of this is on the environmental impact report, if I could have those comments first, and then we'll go to anyone that's opposed to the project second. So is there anybody that has comments about the impact report?
So I don't know if we're finished with questions from the commission, but afterwards, we can open the public comment period.
Just a point of clarification. The only public comments are on the environmental report, not on the project. Is that not correct?
Yeah, so for tonight, we're looking for any public comments on the report. The members of the public can speak, if they have other comments they want to make on the project. It's on the agenda of the project, but the focus for tonight's meeting is on the EIR, seeing as how you're not taking any action tonight.
I have a question about table 411B on, it's chapter 4, 1110. It says that there's a table here where it gives the projected number of students that might be attending the schools in the area due to the development of the project. And if you look at the previous table, it's saying that the schools in the area are right now operating under capacity. So I'm wondering if when we consider schools operating under capacity, if we're considering the teacher-to-student ratio and whether or not there's a staff shortage, and if that's projected to improve, or if that has any impact on what we're looking at here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, schools is it's an interesting focus area within CEQA. It's the way we need to look at schools for CEQA is very limited in its scope, essentially. It says that look at the, report the students that would be generated by the project. It asks us to do that, and we did that. But the CEQA question tends to be, will this cause the schools to expand or grow or change? And that we cannot say that is the case here. But more importantly, with residential projects, by virtue of making payment as impact fees for schools, all impacts are addressed by that action. Essentially, that's the reason why you will find that this analysis says, we'll generate students, we will add to this, but because it will pay impact fees, the impact will be less than significant. So to your question, we don't get into the student-teacher ratios at all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other commissioner questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open up the public comment section. And I see that I have 2 speaker cards here. The first one is from, is it Morticia Perkins? I'm sorry, I apologize for not getting the name right. And if you'd come to the podium, you have 3 minutes.
Hi again. Hello, everyone. I know this one was environmental, but it's just, that's a concern. That's a concern that I have as a homeowner living right behind where the playings are considered. That's where our playground is at. So I know about the environmental part would, from what I'm hearing, would last for a short time, but still, our kids are taking all of that in. They're literally, the playground is right there where all of that development will start. So I talk to the homeowners every day. I'm a busybody in the community, so I'm interacting with people, homeowners, on a regular, being the HOA president, and everybody is echoing the same concern that they have a big issue with another apartment building going up, possibly. If this one goes up, that's what, 4 in less than a 2-mile span. One just opened up less than six months ago. I don't even know if it's fully occupied. So do we need another apartment building as opposed to more homes? I would prefer that, building more homes. So it's just a big concern, not just for the Sienna community, but the lakes. We all talk about it. We're talking about it. It's an issue that we would like to address. If there are more options of things that can go, something that can go there that's better. I don't know, a little park, like something that's going to really enhance, the communities around it, that particular area. I know that I'm for bringing businesses into the community. That I would prefer if it stays the appropriate zoning. I thought it was just zoned for commercial use. So I would rather see something else there, something appropriate that fits into the community. But another apartment building is just, it's just mind-boggling right now, just why so many in that little congested area, as opposed to the Cordelia side. They're building a lot of homes over there, but it seems like in this particular little area, for whatever reason, a lot of apartments want to go there. The traffic, I can tell, like I said, the other apartment is not even fully occupied, and I can tell there's a difference. And just sitting there at Green Valley and Business Center, how long you're waiting for the lights. And of course, the school. There's a big concern about the overcrowding and especially the elementary school. So I'm just here to echo the concerns of the community that I'm hearing constantly, and a lot of people are totally against this new apartment building.
We certainly thank you for your feedback.
I'm sorry?
I said we thank you for your feedback.
Oh, thank you.
And my next speaker card is Carol Chervinko. Okay.
First, thank you for letting me speak tonight. I had written a note to Mr. Atkinson that I would like to share with you tonight, that I also shared with the City Council and all their members. Firstly, the environmental impact does not stop when construction is done with the apartments. You will continue to have CO2 emissions. You will use additional water resources in the city of Fairfield. And regardless of the transportation mitigation, there should be a new traffic study required at peak transportation hours and not use a national traffic study to determine how bad the traffic is at that area. I believe that the fees for the EIR should be paid now and not later. Rezoning the business and industrial park for residential use leads to the overcrowding of schools such as Nelda Mundy, Green Valley Middle School, and Rodriguez High School. Nelda Mundy's transitional kindergarten to third grades are already at capacity with 500 students. Their fourth and fifth grades average 34 students per class. Overcrowded classes lead to poor test scores because teachers cannot adequately educate children. Even for residents without children, a school's reputation affects property values and can reflect poorly on the school district. Math scores are already below state level at 30%. More living units just means more students. While there may be a two-story parking garage, nothing has been said of guest parking. If guest parking imposes at the new hotel management will not be pleased if their own guests have no parking. There is definitely more room to build more residential housing on Sassoon Parkway, where there are already 2 other developments. I ask that you tell the City Council that you will not rezone this area until a general plan amendment or a general plan is made. If it's good to pause and wait for the other thing on the agenda tonight, then it should be good enough to pause for these apartments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any speakers via Zoom?
Yes, it looks like we have two hands raised.
Yes, we're ready for you. We're ready for our Zoom speakers.
Hi there. This
Hello.
is Brenda Villanueva. I am the president of the Green Valley Lakes Edgewater Development, and I have a statement in regards to the EIR that was presented today, as well as my own thoughts. The EIR for the Green Valley apartment shared how building these new apartments would impact the immediate area, but failed to include how the impact the environment itself would have on the apartments since done prior to January 9th. We saw in early January, 22 days of nonstop rain produced over 9.6 inches in the Fairfield area. Experts say the effects of climate change will bring large swings of extreme dryness in the summer, fire danger, and heavy rains during the rainy season. Yet we haven't seen rain in several years due to drought, but what happens if days of rain continue to occur every season? My husband and I, we walk this area often with our dogs. We witnessed the small creek past East Ridge along Rockville Road turned into a fast-moving river flowing through the Vintage Valley neighborhood into the pond by the library, the easement next to Green Valley Road, and the easement bordering the freeway and the current hotels. There was a small lake in the center of the area that is being considered for more apartments. Currently, the water flows into the immediate neighboring easement to keep the current neighborhood safe. And the EIR was done prior to the 22 days of rain, prior to seeing all the rainwater collect in the neighboring easement, prior to seeing the water come streaming down all the hills and streets in the immediate area and possibly causing flooding and jeopardizing human life. The EIR we just presented, the neighboring easement is a small wetlands. She said a small wetlands. During the 22 days of continuous rain, the neighboring small wetland was not small, it was considerable. I also want to mention there are only 2.5 ways out of that immediate proposed apartment area. The hotel recently changed the driveway closest to the main intersection from a 2-way driveway to an outbound driveway, and also narrowing it for only 1 car to exit at a time. Also currently, there's only 1 driveway that allows you to leave left or right, and the other driveway is only a 1-way right driveway. The proposal is to allow for approximately 300 residents, 250 cars to live in this small area. In my own experience, after being evacuated several times from wildfires in the past 7 years, I see during a rush to evacuate, specifically in this apartment building, a huge traffic jam and danger to human lives. I want to point out the EIR slide presented that wildfire is considered less than significant. Let me repeat that,
30
less than
seconds.
significant. Has never been evacuated from their home in that immediate area. Definitely should reevaluate that statement, especially during the summer months, especially October. My opinion is to keep with the original recommendation by the Planning Commission last year and not rezone this area to residential. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts.
Thank you, Ms. Villanueva. Now our next speaker. Our next Zoom speaker.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Joe Green Heffern, and I am a Fairfield resident in North Cordelia, and I am also a president of the Turnstone Homeowners Association. I have two big concerns about the adequacy of the EIR, irrespective of the merits of the project itself. First, the cumulative analysis of potential impacts is flawed, and I will explain. Second, the requested rezoning is a significant land use impact. Otherwise, they wouldn't be requesting a zoning change because it would not be allowed in this area. So fundamentally, it is a significant impact, not less than significant. So cumulative analysis is flawed because the map, figure 4.1, clearly misses many of the past projects and future projects that are housing related along Business Center Drive, which includes Bradford Park, which was an industrial or commercial area that was built, converted to housing about 5 years ago, and all the apartments on Business Center Drive east of Sassoon Valley Road. They did include the new Green Valley 2 apartments, but they missed all the other apartments. Secondly, there are new projects which include the Green Valley, Middle Green Valley development in Solano County, which while it's not within the city, accesses through this area on the same road that all these other houses. So the cumulative analysis is flawed because it doesn't include these past and future projects. In addition, the city at least has identified 3 housing projects along Sassoon Valley Road that will be considered in the general plan for apartments. So there are many, many housing developments that should have been included in the cumulative. Second, any rezoning to add more housing in this area is inappropriate because it's not compliant with the existing plan. And in fact, all the past development in this area has been done on a piecemeal rezoning basis. So it has led to this commercial and public services gap that we are dealing with now. So I don't agree that it's a less than significant impact from land use. It's either a potentially significant that needs to be evaluated in the general plan, or it's significant requiring rezoning under the general plan. And given that the city has decided to update the general plan in the next 6 to 12 months, this project should be denied until there is a vision for this area. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Heffernan. Would staff like to respond to any of the issues raised by the commenters?
Yeah, so the purpose for tonight is to take comments on the EIR, the specific comments that we heard. We heard a number of comments. Some of them were not related to the EIR and more about the merits of the project, but a number of them were directly related to the EIR. We won't be responding to them tonight. What we'll do, part of the process for the EIR, is we transcribe those comments, we take them, and we identify each of the individual components of them that relate to the EIR. We will provide a formal written response to each of the comments we received tonight, as well as any other comments we receive by that come in written form. And again, through the 23rd of February, we're accepting them in written form. And then we will respond to them directly in the EIR itself. So when this comes back to you for an action on the project, it will also come back with what we call the final EIR, which will have a detailed list of all the comments we got, about what they were and how they relate to the EIR, and an actual response. So tonight we won't be responding directly to any of the comments, but that will be coming and you'll have that for your consideration when you're asked to take action on the project.
I'll now close the public comment period and turn it back to the commission for their comments on the EIR. Any commissioners?
Yeah. And Commissioner Matthews, this is a good time we can talk about that and any other comments you all have. And where there's questions as a part of that, we're happy to answer and provide any further.
So I'm looking at table 4.12.8, and that's where I see 840 expected cars, daily cars, due to this project. Is that correct?
Let me get to the table to make sure I'm looking at the
Yeah,
same.
there are no page numbers, so it's kind of hard, but 4.12-13.
Okay, yep, you're right. You're looking at the trip generation table. That's
Okay.
correct. That's right for the
So
project.
what my request is,
Mhm.
is a comparison to what
Yeah.
would be acceptable under current zoning.
Correct.
And I didn't find that in here. Did I miss it?
Not in the transportation section. We reported it in the alternative section. Because in this section where you're looking currently, that is the transportation section of the EIR, right? And you can see that the project would generate about 840 daily trips,
Right.
as shown in this table. And then if we go to the alternatives chapter, which is chapter 6, and specifically if you go to page number 6-9, and I hope you have that.
6-9?
Yeah.
Okay.
And-
I don't see it. Oh, transportation.
Right. That first paragraph describes the alternative of putting, business commercial, I keep using the wrong term. I need to use the right word.
So are you saying, under current zoning, it would be
Yeah,
2,710
correct.
versus 840?
for the project.
So I just think that's an area of big concern for anybody that lives or works in that area, and that somehow we ought to highlight it, because
Yeah.
looking for it, I couldn't find it.
Okay, I understand. I get that. Yeah, we can definitely, Commissioner Matthews, typically because it's an alternative, that information would be reported in this chapter because it's a discussion of an alternative,
Yeah.
not the project, right? But we can highlight it by putting a table in here to show the comparison.
Okay,
That
thank
might
you.
be helpful, because we do that comparison here. We do say that this alternative generates a greater number of daily trips, as you can see, about 1,800 or so more than the project.
Yeah.
Right.
I had a quick question. You identified 7 areas that had significant impact,
Yes.
but you didn't really talk about the strategies in place to address those. Will that come out in the final report?
I'm so sorry. Let me go back to that slide. How does one go back to the slide? I think it was that table, right? Here we go.
Yeah, that's
So those are the 7 areas, and I apologize if I might have miscounted them. Actually, there are 6. Air, biology, cultural, and tribal cultural resources are one group. Geology, soils, noise, and transportation. Those 6 areas.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, when you come out with the final report, will you identify, because you said that there were strategies in place to address those?
Correct.
Will that be spelled out in the final?
They are in the document currently. All of the mitigation measures for impacts that we found significant, for instance, right here, we have 3 air quality impacts that we found potentially significant or significant, and we have mitigation measures for each one of them.
Okay.
In fact, you can see the first one is TRA1 and Bio8. Those are mitigation measures. Then AQ1 is a mitigation measure under air quality. And AQ2 is another mitigation measure under air quality.
Okay.
So there are, corresponding to all of the significant impacts, we have mitigation measures in the document.
Thanks for that clarification.
And I'll highlight, as you're reviewing this, you also, through the 23rd, is that correct?
Correct.
The 23rd, if you have follow-up comments, you can continue to read the document. I will direct you, if you want just a quick shorthand, just summary up front before you dive deeper into it. In Chapter 2, there's a table with 11 by 17 sheets. That's your best, really, summary of all of the analysis in the document, and it will identify which impacts are significant, potentially significant, less than significant, and any mitigation, the mitigations that you're asking about, lists those. So, when I read, I always sort of jump right, and I get a good feel for the whole document by going to that table.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. That'll definitely help us in our review. Any other commissioners? Okay. Well, seeing none, we'll go back to our director's report and commissioners' comments.
Yeah, just a couple of items. So first of all, you'll recall at your last meeting, you recommended that the city council approve our housing element that we presented to you last night. I'm pleased to report that the city council followed your recommendation and approved the housing element for our next 8 years. Today, we submitted it to the state. So, as I mentioned at the time, it's the one element of our general plan that the state actually has to review and approve. We think, based on the comments we got on the draft, that the revised version that you looked at, that the city council approved, is something that they can, that the state will certify. So that's our expectation. So that went to them. They have 60 days to complete their review. Given how short the letter was we got from them on the draft, I'm hoping that much sooner than 60 days we'll know if it's certified, but it could be as much as 60 days before we hear back from them. But very good news that we have passed all of the hurdles that we need to pass at this point to have a certified housing element. Just a reminder, I had asked anyone who's interested in going to the Commissioners Academy. I heard from 4 of you. I'll give you one more day to email me back if you're interested. I do have at least 3 commissioners who haven't attended before, and I know I have budget for that. But if you're interested and you want us to see if we can find budget, do let me know by tomorrow. But after that, we'll be making the reservations and getting.
I know you've done those. Can you give me that date one more time?
Yeah, the date is the 29th through the 31st of March. It's a Wednesday through a Friday. And then finally, just to let you know, we don't have anything scheduled for your next meeting. So you'll adjourn to that. If something comes up at the last second, you'll at least have adjourned to that. But we do have 3 items, essentially little study sessions that we'll be looking to bring to you in March. I'm not sure which items on which dates, but issue of height, transportation presentation from Fairfield to Sassoon Transit, and then a discussion of shopping centers and their needs. So that'll be in March. I think we'll be able to get all of them in. If not March, we'll complete them in April, but at least some of those will be handled in March. So, and we got potentially some other items in March, but for the moment, your last 3 meetings, you've taken on some big items. So a little breather here probably for the next little bit, but some really good discussion tonight. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, any commissioners?
I forgot to disclose that I had a meeting with the Spanos Corporation. Does that need to be disclosed in this setting or only at the point at which we take action?
I think more appropriate at the point where you're actually taking action.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I would just like to add that I was able to attend the City Council retreat on Saturday, and it was a great event, a lot of good ideas, and I'm very excited to see where the city goes in the next few years.
I attended on Friday, and I can tell you this housing element was a big deal. So we did some good work in getting that approved, and our comments were definitely instrumental. So we did some good work there.
Yeah, and so there was lots of discussion about the various goals and objectives the City Council may want to be seeing the city achieving over the coming year. At their March meeting, I believe it's scheduled, one of their March meetings, staff will bring back to them some of the summary of the things that came out of that, the sessions this weekend, and some recommendation for them to adopt for their goals and the objectives for the year. When that happens, I'll report back to you so that here's what the decision makers of the city have said. This is what we want to achieve this year. You're also welcome to watch that meeting live or attend and again, I don't know which of their meetings off the top of my head, but I'll let you know if you want to attend and listen, but I'll certainly report back to you on that. But I concur, really good session this weekend. So.
Okay. Anyone else? We are now adjourned.